Hey ho! This is another video in my series, Reading Old Newspapers. Okay, first I have to say, I'm sorry that my audio skips out and it breaks up and skips and then just for a little while and then comes back. The video usually is pretty good, but I'm sorry if that happens, but I'm still posting it and because I'm not doing it over again. So, sorry if that happens. You'll miss something, but you can keep watching it and it'll fix itself. Okay. Let's start looking at some of these pages here. I haven't done United Kingdom in a long time. I haven't done Australia at all yet, so let's try Australia. Victoria, I guess? Oh, I did Melbourne before. I did Hamilton. Let's change that. New South Wales then. Sydney. Sydney Morning Herald. Let's not go that old. Let's try something fairly new. 1980. April, because we're in April. April 15th. No, Tuesday? Friday. Ooh, 34 pages, of course. The newer the paper, the larger it is usually because yeah. Okay. Ooh, Sydney Morning Herald. 40 million drought relief bid. Help with bores, more loans, feed subsidies. Okay. The state government proposed a $40 million drought relief program yesterday, 17.5 million from its own funds and 22.5 million from the Commonwealth. The Premier, Mr. Rand, announced the proposal last night. They were drawn up at the meeting yesterday morning of the State Cabinet Committee on Natural Disasters chaired by the Assistant Treasurer, Mr. Booth. Under the Commonwealth State Agreement on Natural Disaster Funding, New South Wales will provide the first $10 million. The remaining $30 million will be contributed by the state and the Commonwealth on a 1-to-3 basis. Mr. Rand said he had sent a telex message to the acting Prime Minister, Mr. Anthony, requesting urgent consideration be given to the proposals. Mr. Rand has also sought Commonwealth agreement to vary the existing funding requirements so that Canberra would take responsibility for expenditures in excess of $10 million while the drought continues. Okay, that's good enough. Egg price rises. The wholesale price of 80-gram eggs has been increased from $1.30 to $1.37 a dozen, and 55-gram eggs from $1.16 to $1.24 from today. Retail prices will probably rise by the same amount in the next few days. Arthur Ashe retires. Arthur Ashe, it's over here on the side here. Arthur Ashe, 36, a former Wimbledon and U.S. Open champion, has retired from competition tennis. Ashe had major heart surgery last year but had said that he wanted to make a comeback. Okay. Okay, let's go to another page. Pan Am's offer of 14 days unlimited air travel for only $180 is worth going to America for. The new Pan Am Pioneer Fare. Spring in New York, Florida's Everglades, Miami, Houston, Las Vegas, and California. They're all yours because Pan Am's recent merger with National Airlines has added 23 more cities to our regular schedules. We celebrate, and to celebrate, we're offering you a great new way to see America at the almost unbelievable price. 14 days for $180, 30 days for $270. Well, there's all the Pan Am. I thought they were talking about Pan Am Games there for a second. Ooh, girl's disappearance. Senior Constable Jeff Harris left and Constable John Millington search a farm dam near Buxton. Seeds give clue to girl's disappearance. 4 types of seeds found on the jumper Carol Ann Ashley wore on the morning she disappeared from her home at Taymor have given detectives their strongest clue towards solving the mystery of her whereabouts. Late yesterday, after flying over the area in the police helicopter, Dr. Dr. Siri Jacobs, the botanist who identified the seeds, pinpointed 3 specific locations where all 4 types could be found together. Police and volunteers will comb the areas on foot today. They will concentrate on the Thyramere Lakes, 10 kilometers west of Taymor. The leader of the investigation, Detective Sergeant Les Hackworthy, and other detectives have set up their headquarters in Picton Courthouse with aerial photographs of the area on the walls. It has been 11 days since Carol, 18, disappeared. The only clues are her thongs and the green polo neck jumper she was wearing. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Oh wait, so if Carol has been abducted, her jumper has been dumped away from the place she was taken to, he said. One of the most puzzling aspects of Carol's disappearance was the discovery of her thongs in Natai Street, Taymor, about 100 meters from her home. One thong was by the side of the road, but the other was more than 30 meters. What's this? Olympics, 1980. Free champagne tasting. Advertisement. Okay. $33 per dozen. Magnums, Cab and Sauv, $9.80 each. Huh. Okay, let's go to the next page. World news. GM demoted. Over here on the right. New York, Thursday. General Motors no longer heads the list of the 500 largest U.S. companies, Fortune magazine said today. The carmaker has been edged out of first place by the oil company Exxon. 6 of the top 10 companies on the list are oil companies. AAP, Reuters. Pricey picture. London, Thursday. The American actress Jennifer Jones yesterday bought a 15th century Dutch painting for what was believed to have been the second highest paid price ever paid for a picture. She paid the equivalent of $3.4 million for the resurrection of Christ by Dietrich Bouts at Sotheby's Old Masters auction. Jennifer Jones. I know the name, but I can't put a face to it. Okay, let's go to the next page. Whoa. Can't see the photo. Boy's gift for the Pope. A boy carrying a lamb as a present for Pope John Paul receives a special thank you during the Pope's weekly general audience in St. Peter's Square on Wednesday. Dutch sees princess. Over here. Amsterdam, Thursday. Dutch television showed the film Death of a Princess last night, in spite of objection from the Saudi Arabian government that it was an insult to Islam. The executive board of the Dutch Broadcasting Corporation voted 19-7, just hours before the scheduled broadcast, not to delay the film. Earlier in the day, Saudi Arabia's King Khalid asked the Dutch Prime Minister Mr. Van Agt to block the broadcast, but he replied he was powerless to do so. Death of a Princess is the story of Princess Misha, who was executed by firing squad in 1977 for adultery. Her lover was beheaded. Huh. Okay, go on the next page. Commentary. Fair concessions. Sir, oh, these are letters to the editor. I was going to say. Fair concessions. Sir, the cost of public transportation is ever increasing, according to Alan Mitchell, Herald, April 1st. Has anyone really assessed the cost of concessional travel, be it for public servants, pensioners, and school children. These people should not be deprived of such concessions, but the various departments concerned should bear the cost of such benefits rather than the Public Transport Commission. The reduction in the deficit would be worthwhile. So he's against people paying less, getting concessions for age or whatever like that. What else? Oh, it's a little cartoon. Boycott, not boycott. He jumps over it. He's doing the high jump. Boycott, not boycott. Boycott, not boycott. He's almost over, and he hit the bar, and he knocked it over, and he goes, boycott. Okay, let's move on. Dawn Fraser on her way to a gold medal. With Dawn Fraser. Fraser versus Fraser. The Australian Olympic Federation meets tomorrow to decide a boycott of the Moscow Games. In the following exclusive articles, the Prime Minister, Mr. Fraser, and the Olympic triple gold medalist Dawn Fraser put their cases. I don't want to read it. The Prime Minister, Mr. Fraser, wrote the following argument for an Olympic Games boycott at the request of the Sydney Morning Herald. And then on this side, the following is the text of a letter released last night by J.J. Cullen and Associates, solicitors acting for Dawn Fraser. Okay. Guess it's a big question. Films, theater. Herald Arts. Films, what's here? Winkler's Palpable Brickness. Right here. Film is a medium which even today can draw aggressively conservative reactions from people, even from those who see themselves as film lovers committed to the status of the film as an art form. The dominance of the theatrical convention in film history has been so overwhelming that filmmakers working entirely outside the plot and character approach are usually dismissed as self-indulgent deviants. Yet, film can obviously be explored as a medium having more in common with visual arts than with theater or literary narrative, and it is curious that experimental film is often despised by people who would not dream of snickering at modern art. This response is all the more frustrating to filmmakers working in this area, in that visual experiment with film has a long and vulnerable tradition of its own, going back to the origins of the film almost a century ago. Paul Winkler is an independent filmmaker who believes that his work belongs to the context of an art gallery rather than a theater, and that the films have being screened this weekend at the filmmaker's cinema should be compared to paintings or sculptures rather than to narrative film. Although his works have been invited to major festivals, programmed by galleries around the world, and bought by the Museum of Modern Art in New York, response in Australia has been slower to come. And this weekend screening is his first here for 5 years. Born in Germany, Winkler has lived in Australia since 1959. The films Brick Wall, Brick Backyard, Bark Rhine, Sydney Harbour Bridge, and Bondi transform images of simple, familiar objects from our environment to produce an experience which is intensely beautiful and profoundly disquieting. Because of the way he works, Winkler's films allow a wide range of responses depending on what one brings to them. Hostility and panic are not uncommon reactions at screenings, either because an unwary audience still expects some vestige of theatrical convention, or because the force generated by the pulsating images threatens to become emotionally intolerable. Yet for people willing to concede that there can be other pleasures to be enjoyed as well as those offered by a narrative, the cinema of Paul Winkler is perfectly accessible, with or without a knowledge of the formal problems it poses. Each work generally begins with a simple representation of a concrete object: a brick wall, a run-down suburban backyard, flowers, grass, a tree trunk, a postcard view of the Harbour Bridge, the Bondi surf and beachfront. Then the images are systematically worked on in a number of different ways so that the object fragments and decomposes, reforms, and rearranges itself with a delirious rhythmical freedom which is purely cinematic, yet which seems to release some quality which is uniquely the object's own. Screenings are this weekend only. I read the whole. I read that. That's the only thing I want to read. Share the jobs, says Mrs. Rand. Mrs. Jill Rand, wife of the Premier, has outlined her strategy to reduce unemployment. It includes longer holidays, a shorter work week, maternity and paternity leave, retraining and continuous training of the workforce, job sharing, and early retirement. Ms. Rand told guests at the Italian Chamber of Commerce lunch at Point Pier yesterday that new attitudes and new approaches were needed. She said, "It is idealistic to imply that job creation schemes, for example, are the solution. The problem is one organization which simply have is both to work and employment, because we are not going to find direct solutions to unemployment simply by manipulating current realities." Mrs. Rand said she had grown up believing that work was an essential part of human dignity, and there has never been any suggestion that obtaining work was a privilege. Sadly, this period now seems to have come to a close with current relatively high levels of unemployment, she said. Here we shall have to consider the prospect of longer holidays, a shorter work week, permanent part-time job sharing, early retirement, retaining and continuous training of people in the workforce, not to mention huge changes in welfare policies and industrial relations. Mrs. Rand said it is now known that the major task for the future was one of work reorganization, which would call for attention to such complex matters as management, successions, delegation, redundancies of current jobs, and retaining of staff. She attacked the present stimulation of consumption for consumption's sake, for encouraging waste and environmental dislocation. In a world of limited resources, a system which is designed to generate massive waste for a throwaway society simply cannot ethically justify its continued existence. Makes sense, but it's hard to do. Okay, next page. I'm just going to go through one newspaper today. Usually I try to go through two. What's this? Basics calls seen as threat to arts. Arts programs in schools are being threatened by a range of real and phantom menaces. The most visible and, in most respects, the most damaging being embodied the catchery back to the basics. To basics. This warning was given yesterday by Victoria's Director General of Education, Dr. L. W. Shears, when he addressed the conference in Sydney about education and the arts. Dr. Shears said that while it was difficult to specify the back to basics concept, supporters of this concept claim that education was being led astray from its true, i.e. traditional purposes. Education was squandering children's time and public resources on peripheral or irrelevant experiences. This is the category into which the Back to Basics movement places the arts. Not only was the quality of teaching and learning in the basics deteriorating, but too much educational time was being spent on the soft options. Art teachers must become articulate spokesmen, able to convince the children, the community, and the educational administration that their investment in the arts was well spent. Other speakers were Mr. Willard L. Boyd, president of Iowa University, and Professor Gregory Jeffrey Blaney, chairman of the Australia Council. Okay, next page. Sorry, my reading is awful. I'm not good at reading. Out loud. Reading from a paper out loud. Liberal forced to take a seat. Canberra. The Queensland Liberal backbencher, Mr. Don Cameron, was seated ruefully in his Parliament House office yesterday with his feet up on the desk. One of them was encased in plaster. I was asleep in my Canberra home the night before last when I was awakened by a noise at the door, and someone let himself in, he explained. I sat up in bed and looked into the hallway, and I could see this figure in the dark. I concluded it was an intruder because there had been lots of reports of a prowler in the area. I went for him, and upon reaching him, he let out a blood-curdling scream of fear. I recognized the scream was that of my housemate, Peter Drummond, the Liberal member for the Western Australian seat of Forest. Forest? Yes. As I stopped myself going for him, I slipped on my ankle and broke the bone in it, Mr. Cameron said. I am being married in 2 weeks, so I go down the aisle in plaster, the doctors tell me, he said. Cute story. Radioactive matter returned. A box of radioactive material stolen from Cardiff High School, Newcastle, 2 weeks ago was found on the school steps yesterday morning. Detectives who examined it said nothing has been taken and the box has been cleaned of fingerprints. Huh. Okay, let's go to the next page. What's this? Events Days Zimbabwe? Bitter enemies parade together. Salisbury? Is it Salisbury or Salisbury? When Prince Charles came down from the royal plane, Mr. Robert Mugabe stood with General Peter Walls, who headed Rhodesian military operation against the guerrillas, and 2 guerrilla commanders. The Prime Minister introduced the Prince to his cabinet. 20 blacks, 2 whites. Rhodesian strike aircraft roared overhead. The band played God Save the Queen. It was a scene that could hardly have been invented in fantasy a few months ago, and that is the general feeling as the country changes from Rhodesia to Zimbabwe of events too amazing to believe. Someone who has visited here from time to time over the past 14 years finds himself shaking his head again and again in wonder. When I was last here, a little over a year ago, Mr. Mugabe was officially referred to as the Marxist terrorist. His name struck genuine terror into the hearts of most whites. Now those same people are heard praising Mr. Mugabe as the man of reassuring moderation. Huh. Mugabe. Mugabe ended 7-year war. Huh. Okay. Nothing good here. Move on. Lots of ads. Lots of ads. Opera House rebuilds eyesore. The fibroplaster gatehouse at the Opera House is being replaced by a six-sided glass structure costing about $92,000. The general manager of the Sydney Opera House Trust, Mr. Lloyd Martin, said yesterday the existing temporary structure was an embarrassment to the trust. It has been constantly condemned by local people and visitors as a great eyesore, he said. Construction of the new and permanent gatehouse began a few days ago. It should be completed by August. The materials used would ensure that it would last as long as the Opera House, he said. This and the need for completely new plumbing, sewerage, and electricity contributed to its cost. The new air-conditioned building, designed by the government architect, will have a bronze roof and external walls of tinted glass. The glass will match that of the Opera House and will enable the staff to observe activities on the concourse. Mr. Martin said the present gatehouse has been the subject of continual staff complaints. The spokesman for the trust, Mr. D. Brown, said the trust had wanted it removed since 1974. Mr. Martin said people had also complained about the covered walkway, saying it afforded no views of the Opera House. The trust, he said, was planning to extend and redesign the walkway in glass and bronze, but no date has been fixed for this. What is this? Law notes. Next page. What's that? 86 cents for smokes. Television. What's on there? Days of Our Lives, The Young and the Restless, General Hospital, Search for Tomorrow, The Curiosity Show. Here's Lucy, Family Feud, The Young Doctors, News and Weather, Happy Days, Their Closing Inspirational Point, Henry Winkler. Inspiration Point. Their Closing Inspiration Point. I know Inspiration Point. I've seen the show. Movie, Castaways on Gilligan's Island, 1979. Late movie, Paces to Baker Street. Hush Hush, Sweet Carol Charlotte. Hi, Downtown. Jeopardy, Bewitched, 7 Sydney News, 7 National News, National News. This is on Channel 7. Barney Miller, The Indian. Movie at 8:30. Greatest Heroes of the Bible. Yeah. Radio. What's on the radio? Okay, next page. Travel. Look at this. Hit the Canadian Trail for only $89. 8 days camper Canadian Scene Holidays from $89. Includes camper vehicle for 7 nights, camper supplies, and 525 kilometers free. The carefree, low-cost way to explore the spectacular British Columbian wilderness, the Rockies, or wherever your wanderlust leads you. 9 days Rocky Mountain Scene from $244. Includes accommodation, see Calgary Banff National Park, Kicking Horse Pass, Vancouver, Historic Victoria. 15 days Totem Circle Scene, $654, not including airfare. The escorted tour has everything. Highlights include coastal and lake cruises, authentic Indian villages, Jasper and Banff National Parks, snow coach, glacier crossing, snow coach. Canadian Pacific Air. Okay, that's interesting. They're advertising. Huh. Advertising. 18. Let's go to. Okay, I think this might be it. Show off that shirt. Men's fashion. Nothing interesting. Sports. Have we got to the sports page yet? What happened here? Yeah, I put 19. Oh, here we go. Races. Sports. It's horse racing, I think. Race 1, race 2, race 3, race 4. The feeling that's horse racing. I think it's all racing. It's all horse racing. K20. I don't know what I'm reading here, or looking at. I think it's all these races of horse racing. Track racing. Horse track racing. Okay, I'm calling it. Okay. That's the show. We only went through one paper. Where was that? New South Wales. That's what I'll put in New South Wales when I put the title. Okay. I wonder what happened to that girl, 18-year-old girl. She was disappeared. I hope she was found, safe and sound. Okay, signing off. Remember, live your life and see what happens. See you later.